Match number 12 of 15 from Uncensored, March 15th, 1998, from the Mobile Civic Center in Mobile, Alabama. Diamond Dallas Page, Raven, and Chris Benoit in what they called a Triple Jeopardy match. Falls Count Anywhere for the United States Championship. This was a really fun match. A couple of really creative spots in there for that time, especially. Apparently the finish was being debated right up until bell time. Benoit was originally supposed to win the U.S. title, but that ended up not happening. DDP and Raven were feuding at the time, and they interjected Benoit into the feud, probably just to make the matches better. We got a three-way collar and elbow tie-up to start, which is where that clip you heard at the beginning of the podcast came from, with Tony Schiavone talking about how he's never seen three men hook it up together at one time, which I thought was funny because apparently I'm 12. They brawled down the aisleway. They put a trash can over Raven's head at one point, and Benoit and DDP both took turns bashing it with a crutch. Where they found this crutch, I have no idea. There was a giant uncensored sign next to the entranceway that DDP got thrown through. Cut up his back pretty good on it. It didn't look like glass when he went through it. I guess it must have been. It looked like it was made of cardboard or plastic or something, but he was all cut up after. Benoit hit Raven with the kitchen sink. Literally, the kitchen sink. I think the first time I ever saw an actual kitchen sink used in a match was at a WrestleMania. It would have been 13. They had that Chicago street fight. It was Ahmed Johnson and LOD against the Nation. I think it was Hawk, who brought an actual kitchen sink to the ring. That probably would have been the first time I ever saw that. Back in the ring, Benoit had Raven in a sleeper hold. This was one of the cooler spots of the match. So DDP, who had been thrown through that sign, was all cut up. He crawled all the way back to the ring, from one end of the aisle to the other. He crawled all the way back. Got in the ring. He put Benoit in a sleeper, while Benoit still had Raven in a sleeper. So now we have a double sleeper hold. And Raven wisely dropped down for the jawbreaker, which is one of the wisest ways to break up a sleeper hold. But it turned out to be a double jawbreaker, because when he dropped and Benoit had his jaw jacked on top of Raven's head, so too did DDP get his jaw jacked on top of Benoit's head. So I thought that was kind of cool. And this was the coolest spot of the whole match. Benoit's giving Raven his rolling Germans. Gave him two of them, I think. All of a sudden, DDP comes up from behind Benoit, and he delivers a double German suplex. DDP suplexed Benoit, who suplexed Raven. See, DDP did it long before Brock Lesnar ever did. So the place went nuts. The announcers went nuts. That was the biggest spot of the night. Probably the biggest spot of the entire show. And I didn't even watch the whole show, and I bet you it was probably the biggest spot they did that night. And he did it with busted up ribs, no less. In storyline, he had tape all over his ribs and everything. So Lodi, remember Lodi? Lodi was one of the members of Raven's flock. What was it? It was Lodi, Sick Boy, Kidman, Reese, Saturn. Was Saturn part of the flock? I don't remember. I think he might have been. So Lodi handed Raven a sign that literally said, "Use my sign," and he hit DDP with it. Then he pulled the paper off, and it turned out to be a stop sign underneath. Raven set DDP up on a table in the ring. Benoit then hit Raven in the head with the stop sign after he put it down. Benoit set Raven up on the top rope. So you got to visualize this now. DDP is laid out on a table. Benoit's got Raven on top. It looks like he's going to suplex him onto DDP through the table. DDP sees this. He gets up off the table. He just shoves Benoit off the top rope to the floor. So Benoit's gone. DDP climbs up. He then delivers a diamond cutter to Raven off the top rope through the table. Well, it was supposed to be through the table. It was on top of the table. The table didn't break. The table leg broke, but the actual table did not break. It still looked cool. It was a botch, but it was fine. It actually looked it looked more brutal that way, because poor Raven, instead of going through, he just kind of smacked the table, and the table kind of fell over. And DDP covered him, got the pin, and retained the title. So, a hell of a fun match. The very next month at Spring Stampede, Raven beat DDP to win the U.S. title, but his reign only lasted one day. He was only meant to be a transitional champion. He lost the title to Goldberg on Nitro the very next night, which, coincidentally, is another match on our countdown. I was never the biggest Raven fan, but Raven deserved a longer run with that belt. He had a good thing going in WCW around this time. This was when he was at his peak. The peak of what they did with him, anyway. He had a good thing going. They could have gotten a few months out of him, I think, with that championship, but it was just wrong place, wrong time. I mean, Goldberg was on the ascent. Goldberg was more over than almost everybody else on that roster, certainly more than Raven. It was the right move to make to put the belt on Goldberg, but still, I think Raven deserved better than what he got.